Thank you for joining me on today's QuickBooks Enterprise webinar. My name is Kathryn Butts. I'm a senior consultant at Fourlane, and today I'll be discussing custom fields in QuickBooks Enterprise. In today's webinar, we will cover how to set up custom fields on both names and items, how we can add custom fields to templates, and we'll run some example reports. Custom fields are ways that we can add extra data to our list information, which also means extra fields we can populate on our templates or data we can add to reports. Sometimes there's an extra relevant piece of information that we want to include in our QuickBooks file, and QuickBooks just doesn't have a logical home for that data. That's where custom fields come in. They allowed you to add in that additional data set with a wide array of options. Let's take a look at how we can set up some custom fields and where they populate in our QuickBooks Enterprise environment. In QuickBooks, you can have up to 30 custom fields, but you can't have more than 12 per category. This allows quite a bit of flexibility to customize QuickBooks to meet your needs. Let's begin by looking at how we can set up custom fields for customers, vendors, and employees, our names list. Now, there are many different reasons why people would want to add a custom field to one of their customers, vendors, employees. Maybe you already use sales rep for your sales team, but you want to know what technician is associated with an account. Or you want to assign a customer to a geographical region or territory for your routing and deliveries. You may want to track customers' birthdays. Maybe for vendors, we want to track when a contract expires. Or for employees, you may want to track something that's not part of a normal employee profile, like t-shirt size. Whatever the reasons, there are lots of ways that we can be creative with this process. And let's look at a few examples of how we can add a data field to a customer, vendor, or employee record. If I click into any customer and then click into the additional info tab, you're going to see the custom field section here on the right. To add a custom field, we'll click Define Fields. I currently don't have any set up on customers. When we set up a custom field, the first thing we need to do is to give that custom field a label. What kind of data will this field be used for? Next, we need to say which list will use this custom field, customer, vendor, or employee. It can be used on only one list or any combination of customers or vendors or employees. You need at least one checkbox here in order to activate the custom field. Next, you can choose what kind of data will be entered in the custom field. The most popular is the top one, any text option, which allows you to free type in the custom field. But you can also define that field to contain numbers, dates, phone numbers, or a multiple choice list. While the any text option is the most popular, I am going to caution you that this could cause some issues down the line. Let's say that we have an any text custom field for the service text that's doing work out on a job. If I use any text, I could have a whole mix of people typing in the same information in different ways. John, Johnny, John Smith, JS, all might mean the same thing, but it makes it hard for us to filter reports. We'll take a look at that a little later on. In order to create consistency with your team, I recommend you use the multiple choice list whenever possible. This will standardize your option, which means less remembering and fewer decisions we'll have to make when filling out data, and therefore our information will be more reliable. When completing the setup of a custom field, you can also determine if the custom field will be required on a transaction or list. And required in this context really does mean do not pass go without filling out that field. So carefully consider if that is truly the right use case for your team. Now I'm going to set up two custom fields on a customer right now. We're going to add in customer birthday. I'm going to say that this is used on a customer and the data is a date. And I'm not going to say that this is required because it's probably not possible for me to get a birthday for every single customer. Next, I want to add in territory. and I'm going to apply that to customers. And I am going to use a multiple choice list for this. And I am not going to allow users to enter in their own text. I want them just to use the 5 choices that I've provided. Once I click OK, we're going to see that these custom fields will populate here on my screen. And now I can enter in this information. Once I click OK, this record will be updated with that custom field information. We can also customize our sales order templates to include that territory. This might be helpful for scheduling deliveries. Let's go to a sales order, and I'm going to click in the Formatting tab and then Customize Data Layout. Custom fields associated at the name level are present on the Header tab. And remember that I can choose here if I want this to be something that shows up only on the screen, or do I want this to print as well? Let's select both. I'm going to click OK. Now, if I were to create a sales order for Nancy Baker, you're going to see that that territory is going to pull from the customer record and automatically populate that. And now I can enter in her sales order. If I want this territory information to come over onto an invoice, I need to make sure that there's a home for that piece of data as well. So when I come into my invoice template, I can do the same thing. This is a one-time setup to add in that territory. Now again, you're going to see that that data is going to populate, and I'm going to save. If, for example, I wanted to run a sales report by sales in a territory, I could now see how, for example, adding in the territory field is going to show sales by customers in different territories. This could be very valuable to me if I'm trying to develop new routes, hire more technicians to service specific areas, or determine where I need to spend some advertising dollars. Now let's go back and look at that custom field that we set up for Nancy here. Sometimes when we set up a custom field, we're going to be adding in data that's static, meaning that it's going to be associated with this record, and we just need a place to house this information. A customer's birthday won't change every time we do a transaction. But if you add in a custom field and you need a quick and easy way to add this data to all of your records, I'm going to recommend that you use the Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries feature to update your list info. And this is so much more efficient than clicking into each customer name to make the change. We'll go to Lists, Add, Edit, Multiple List Entries. On this screen, you'll see that this is available for different kinds of lists, customers, vendors, and different kinds of items. I'm going to start by clicking on Customize Columns in the upper right-hand corner. From here, I can add in my customer birthday custom field and my territory field and click OK. I'll also resize my columns to make these a little bit easier to view. Once I have my screen set up, it is extremely easy to be able to add in the birthday information by typing that in the date format. Or I can use the territory. Oops, see, it didn't like my format. Or I can use my territory here to choose their territory from that pull-down list that I created when I set up my custom field. Now, if you have a large number of updates to do on any of these records, you may want to start by exporting out the customer contact or vendor contact list from Excel, making these updates in Excel, copying and pasting carefully from those columns on your Excel document into the Add, Edit, Multiple, and then you can save your changes. I do recommend before you endeavor on these mass updates that you do make a backup just in case something doesn't go perfectly the first time. Once I save my changes here, you can see that in my customer center, if I click on David Brown, for example, I'm going to be able to see that his information was updated from that add edit multiple. So it's a great way to be able to quickly update your name entries with your new custom fields. Let's switch over into the vendor center and let's take a look at how we'd use some custom fields here. In my vendor center, I'm going to choose my vendor called Fourlane, and I'm going to click into that same additional info tab. I have two custom fields already set up at the vendor level. The top is a delivery method of bills with a multiple choice list. This is mostly just an internal FYI for my AP department so they know how this vendor chooses to send their bills. I also have an ordered by custom field that I want to use on purchase orders so I can keep track of who orders what. Now, I've also set this one up as a multiple choice custom field because there are only a limited number of people on my purchasing team. And remember, this is going to help me to standardize my reporting, which we'll look at here in a moment. Let's pull up a purchase order and we'll add in that custom field. Again, I'm going to come into formatting, customize data layout, and we're here now looking at the custom fields that we have activated for our vendor list. And I am going to choose ordered by. And I'm not going to make this print on my screen because that's not something that my recipient is going to need to reference. I'm going to click OK. Now you can see when I click Fourlane and I say ordered by, we'll say Sarah, we'll place a purchase order here. All right. Now once I do this, my template looks good to go. My PO looks good to go. I'm going to hit save. And then I want to direct your attention to this pop-up message here on my screen. You need to have some awareness of what this pop-up message means. And it's saying that since we added new information into a data field on the vendor record, in our case, we added Sarah to ordered by, it's asking us if we click yes, if we want to reflect this change at the vendor record. In other words, do we want to make this a permanent update to the vendor? If we say yes here, which I'll do, I'm now going to notice that in the vendor center for Fourlane, I have Sarah's name populated here. And that could cause some problems because the next time we go in to create a purchase order, Sarah's name would show up on that ordered by field by default. And if you and your team are suffering from a lot of pop-up fatigue in QuickBooks, it can be super easy to just click yes and move on without knowing that you either used a default piece of information and didn't update that yourself, or that you've permanently recorded Sarah's name at the vendor record. So this can lead to some sloppy reporting if people aren't particularly diligent about filling out all the fields on their forms and reading those pop-ups. Now, if having people accidentally set these defaults and custom fields to become static pieces of information that are really supposed to be updated every time they're used, like tracking numbers would be a good example. If I have a custom field for a tracking number on a shipment, I don't want that tracking number to be permanently attached to my customer or vendor record. I want that updated each time. So this preference may not be something we want. We may not want that pop-up message. So let me show you what we can do. I'm going to come to Edit, Preferences, and then General, and then Company Preference. And I want your attention to go to this box here, Never Update Name Information when saving a transaction. If I click this, then let's try our experiment again. I'm going to come into Purchase Order. I'm going to choose this time Import Agent, and I'm going to buy some Frisbees. You're going to notice that my ordered by is blank, and I'm going to say that this was ordered by Kathryn, and I'm going to click Save. Now you'll notice that no pop-up message came up this time. And if I save and close this and then look at my vendor center under the import agent, I'm going to notice that no information was filled in here. Now, this may not be the right option for everyone, but I do want you to know that if that is something that might be causing problems with some custom fields, there is a preference that might help with that data being auto-populated there. The reason that I'm so interested in this particular custom field for ordered by is that I want an easy to read report that tells me who I need to follow up with if an order hasn't come in on their purchase order. So the easiest way for me to do that is to build a report that's going to show me open purchase orders. I'm going to customize my report, and I'm going to add in that ordered by. Look at that. Now I have an easy way to tell who ordered what from which vendor. And if I have a problem with that order or I need to follow up because an order hasn't been received, I know who the responsible person is very easily. Now, there's another thing that I can do with this report. And if I come up into Customize Report, I can click on Filters, and I can filter it by that ordered by as well. And I do want you to look at what this screen looks like here. This ordered by is a free type field. Now, this means that even though ordered by is set up as a multiple choice list on the custom field, in order to run a filter, I do need to type in the name that I'm wanting to filter for, in this case, Josh. So I'm going to type in Josh and click OK. Now I have an open purchase order report of all of Josh's purchase orders. Imagine that scenario that we talked about a moment ago where instead of this just saying Josh, some of them said Joshua or JB or Joshy. I would need to have 5 different filters run to capture all of Josh's transactions. So you're starting to see the benefit of using that multiple choice list. It means it's very easy for me to choose only that right term to be able to filter my reports by. I can filter custom fields by one field at a time, but remember, if you have some different needs, it's very easy to export these to Excel and use their filter and sorting features to be able to modify your report. Don't forget as well that anytime we're adding fields to a report, we can always memorize that report or add it as an icon to my icon bar. Let's say JB's POs. And now I have an icon here to be able to quickly bring that report back up again. Now let's switch gears and let's look at some custom fields associated at item records. Remember that custom fields associated with customers and vendors appear at the header of forms, at the top of the forms, but custom fields associated with items populate out the body of our forms, and they go in with the item lines. If you need to customize a build assembly template, you'll be using custom forms on the items as well. And there are many different ways that custom fields can be used for items. Remember, this can be either a static piece of data that's associated with the item, or it can be something that's filled in as you go. You might need an extra data set on your items like weight, or a unique part number, or packaging quantities, or colors. You could have the same options here as you have for creativity when setting up your list information. Let's go in and look at my dog food item, and we'll see by clicking on custom fields what these custom fields are. Now, when I set up a custom field, I'm required to input in the same kind of information. At the item level, I would have a label. I'm choosing whether or not to activate this with this little checkbox here in use. And I have the same options here for what kind of data, as well as making a determination if this is going to be required on transactions or lists. In the case of my dog food item, I have two static pieces of information. I have a country of origin for USA, and I have a lead time here of 10 days. Now, best practice here is that if we want to report on this data, I need to see the data. So let's fill out a purchase order, and I'm going to walk you through a few examples here of how these purchase orders, of how these custom fields are used on purchase orders. So we can see here I have my custom fields filled out, and then I'm going to click Home, and then I'm going to create a purchase order. And let's create a purchase order for Dog Supplies R Us and dog food. Okay. Now remember, when we were looking at that item, we just saw that those custom fields were filled out for country of origin and lead time, and I'm saving and closing that purchase order. Okay. Now, if I come into reports and then purchases and then open purchase orders detail, we always start with the detail report if we want line item data. I'm going to go ahead and format this report. Now, you can scroll through when adding in some custom fields to your reports, but this list is not alphabetical. So what you see me do a lot of time is adding in the custom fields here by just typing in the words. So we'll add in the lead time, and we'll add in the country of origin. Okay. All right. Now, that order that I just populated here for dog food does not have the country of origin or the lead time in it, even though we know from our item list that those custom fields are set up. And why can that be? Well, oftentimes with custom fields, I need to be able to see the information in order to get it to populate out on my reports. This might mean that you need to add those custom fields into your transactions in order to get the reporting to work correctly. Let's make some modifications to that purchase order template and try again. So I'm going to come in to Formatting, Customize Data Layout, Columns, because remember, the columns are where the item data lives. So our custom fields associated at the item level are going to live here. So I am going to add in country of origin and lead time. I'm going to add those in on the screen only. I don't need those to print, and I'm going to click OK. Now, if I create a purchase order for my dog food item, I can now see USA and lead time populated on that. I'm going to click Save here, and let's go back and look at that report. Aha! That data has populated on my report. Now, when you are thinking about the kind of data that you want to use for custom fields, I highly recommend that you do a little experiment like we just did. Make sure that you can report on the data the way that you expect in order to get the most power out of your custom fields. If you don't see the data on the report, make sure that you can see the data field on the form and try again. And once you have configured this to make your reports work, ensure that your team has been trained and is on board with these process changes and are using the correct templates to look out for those data fields. Once again, I can filter on this data if needed. And to do that, for example, if I click Customize Report and then Filter, let's say I want to go into country of origin. Again, I'm going to be typing in here, USA, and I can easily filter that report. If, however, you want other options, remember it's always available to export this report to Excel and run some pivot tables and filters from there. Now, custom fields can be a powerful way for us to get more insight into our data. When your business evolves, sometimes your QuickBooks file needs to evolve right along with it. And making small adjustments to our QuickBooks file can yield big results. So think about some of the things you're tracking outside of QuickBooks and consider if a custom field can help you to consolidate all of that data into your company file. The more information we can bring into QuickBooks, the better our reporting will be. I appreciate you joining me for today's webinar and hope to see you back again very soon. Thank you.